everybody to the latest instalment of our London Interviews podcast. And we're very, very delighted today to be speaking with Paul Dean, who heads up the shipping practice at HFW. Now, HFW is a global sector-focused law firm known for its deep industry expertise, with the market-leading shipping practice advising clients in the sector for more than 140 years. The shipping team comprises of over 220 lawyers, providing a full legal service for clients across the industry. And Paul has led the firm's shipping practice since 2019 and was recently elected for a third consecutive term. He has overseen the team in supporting the sector through some of its most turbulent periods, from the COVID-19 pandemic to the ongoing war in Ukraine. Visitors to LISW will remember the excellent interview we had a couple of years ago with Paul, talking about industry issues. And I think really with what's going on in the shipping industry and the maritime sector globally, there's a lot happening, and certainly a lot of questions that the shipping industry in all of its areas will be very keen to ask experts like Paul on. But we're very delighted to have you with us today, Paul, and welcome to London Interviews. Nice to see you again.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, 2 years have passed since LISW25, and then of course we did have the COVID issue before that in 2021 for LISW, and I was speaking to some colleagues the other day that it was one of those times, just keep going, head down, keep going. We are going to bring out LISW, even though we didn't know whether we were going to go in and out of lockdown or whatever. But there's a lot happening in shipping at the moment, Paul, isn't there? I mean, before we go into specifics, it's quite an interesting time at the moment for shipping and maritime.
It is. I mean, I'm not sure I can think of a time during the last 37 years that I've been in the shipping industry at HFW where there is, frankly, so much that's going on all at the same time, and a number of sort of different threads that are affecting the industry. I just can't think of a parallel, even when you go back to, for example, 1991, and the Gulf War. It really is quite a remarkable time, and our clients, they like some certainty, but there is no certainty out there at the moment. I think the only certainty is uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think actually you draw a good parallel there with 1991. With you had a number of issues around about that time. You had the double hull situation. You had my memory. I was on Lloyd's List at the time, but the Piper Alpha, I think, was around about that time as well, and what have you. But now it's completely different. You've got a president in the White House who is changing policy day by day, half day by half day. You've got a lot happening as far as geopolitics. The interesting thing, though, is that shipping demonstrates its agility minute by minute and just carries on getting on with it with the job, albeit having to deal with these issues in the background.
Shipping is an extraordinary industry, and which isn't surprising, frankly, given it's been around for thousands of years and has this, frankly, unparalleled ability to adjust to the circumstances that it's in. I mentioned 1991, but we looked back to 1991 when we were worried on our clients' behalf in relation to what could happen if the Straits of Hormuz were closed only a week or so ago. And it was interesting, I remembered, but this is in the early days of me being a solicitor at HFW, that we wrote a booklet back in 1991 in terms of the legal issues. And I remember thinking, I'm sure we wrote something about this. We went back to that as part of our planning so that we could help our clients in anticipation of what may happen most recently. So it is one of those circumstances where history informs the present and the future. And it is quite extraordinary.
So coming on to geopolitics and take a pick which angle you want to come in from, really, because there's a lot happening. Goodness me, from a macro level looking down, you've got a lot of political dynamics that are impacting maritime trade and security. You've got you know, stakeholders having to act in different ways, new trade lanes, avoiding Red Sea, avoiding the Suez Canal, high alert, the impact on markets, all the rest of it. What are what are the big issues at the moment? I mean, what would not only that your clients are saying to you, but that you are actually, flagging up, saying, well, look, this is happening, because you'll have to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of all of that. These are the likely consequences. This is what could happen. We could be seeing elements on charter party demurrage or anything like that that might happen as a result.
Yeah,
What goes through your mind, and what's happening as far as that is concerned?
well, I think there are probably 5 or 6 things which are at the forefront of our mind at the moment. I think where I would begin really is the continuing war in Ukraine, and that is a sort of that has a ripple effect. But I think the starting point, I think there for me has been the emergence of the dark fleet, which brings with it a number of implications with it. And I think the other element to that is the ever-changing sanctions landscape, which is truly global. And when I say ever-changing, it's not as the changes are not as rapid as they were at the beginning of the war now, but they are changing, I would say, relatively frequently, and our clients expect us to react and advise them as soon as there has been a change or in anticipation of a change. I think that's one thing. I think another thing, and not that long ago, I was invited to a dinner in Sweden by a friend, and I sat next door to the equivalent of M, the head of the Secret Service in Sweden. And it was fascinating to hear her talk about the threats from state actors, particularly in relation to subsea infrastructure, which was seeing and sort of from alleged dragging of anchors and that sort of thing, which is well known in the press. We've seen that, and the implications for shipping and the wider infrastructure, whether it's cables or whatever it may be. So I think there's that. And then we've got more recently whether they're legally defined as war, and that can have an effect on charter parties, for example. But there's the war between Israel and Palestine. Then you've got Israel and Lebanon, and then, of course, much more recently, Israel and Iran. And as you mentioned earlier, you've got the Red Sea, the Houthis' attacks on ships, the rerouting of vessels around the Cape, and then, as I mentioned a few moments ago, you've got the threat of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and all of this leads to clients calling us saying, "What do we do? What are we allowed to do? What are the consequences? Who bears the additional costs?" So, for example, in relation to the difference in cost of going through the Red Sea to go around the Cape, who ultimately pays? Because it's significant in terms of the cost, but also, as important, the extra time that's involved. So we're asked to consider that. And then I think also, and this is something which is more recent, and some time ago I mentioned that cyber, for example, and spoofing is not the subject of James Bond films. It's real, and we saw it recently in the Gulf, where there was a collision between 2 vessels, where it is suggested that that was as a result of spoofing,
Right.
and a number of other vessels in that part of the world were the victims of spoofing. So there's that. Then I think what we've also seen and most recently involving the vessel, the Villamora, just off Libya, is these alleged limpet mine explosions. I think we're now up to 5 attacks where it's alleged they are as a result of limpet mines. And again, that seems to be a ripple effect from the war in Ukraine. So there are questions in relation to war risks. Again, who's paying for these things? And then if we step away from, let's call it warlike operations, whatever it may be, I don't want to get into the sort of the legal definition of war, but if you look at the president in the White House and the use of tariffs, and as you mentioned at the outset, things change daily or half daily. It's very much, I would say, there are shifting sands of uncertainty in relation to those. 1 minute we're asked to advise on one implication, and then it's changed. And we've got the USTR restrictions and fees in relation to Chinese tonnage and other tonnage, car carriers, etc., whatever it may be. And then I think last but not least is the future. I mean, what does the future hold? I keep coming back to this phrase, the future is uncertain, or certainty in uncertainty.
Yeah.
What's going to happen with, say, Taiwan? I mean, I just don't know. And I think what I do know is that shipping will react to it and trade will continue. There was a marvelous video that I saw that emanated, I think, from the Greek Ship Owners Association, which talked about what would happen if shipping stopped, and it was apocalyptic. It was extraordinary. I don't know whether you've seen it.
I've
It
heard
really
of
is.
it. I've heard about it.
It's marvelous. Really
Yeah.
marvelous.
I want to tap into a lot of the stuff that you've been talking about here.
There's a lot there.
Now, before I want to come on to the dark fleet, I want to talk about that, and certainly as far as tariffs in Iran Taiwan is concerned. On the Houthi thing, just something that's occurred to me there. You know, when you've got issues to do with charter parties and stuff like that, and let's say you've got a sanctioned situation. Okay, so I've got a charter party. I'm chartering a vessel for 20 years, and I'm 10 years into it, and suddenly that vessel has been sanctioned, and I've got to pull out of it. I can then get sued. Now it's nothing to do with me. It's not my fault. I'm just not allowed now to deal with that entity. And who carries the can on that situation? When you've also got something like going around the Cape, you know, you've got the Suez Canal Authority who've seen a massive reduction in their revenues as a result. Can they sue people? Can they sue for damages? Can they sue for loss of revenue?
You know, I've never thought about it.
And I haven't. When you said that, you're talking about that sort of as an implication.
I think so. Could they sue? Yes, I think they probably could sue. Who would they sue? They would They would have to sue whoever is the cause of their loss of revenue. The cause of the loss of revenue, you would think, would have to be the Houthis.
Yeah.
And frankly, good luck.
Okay.
So I think, yes, legally, yes, you've got a claim. Where there's blame, there's a claim.
Yeah.
Your target would be the Houthis.
Well, one point on sanctions, and sanctions is a very, very emotive, clear area really, because it's I suppose you've got 3 or 4 elements of sanctions here. You've got US, you've got UK, you've got EU.
Mm-hmm.
One that was raised to me was, let's say a ship supplier who's supplying a ship. Okay, I have supplied that ship £250,000 worth of stores, and now that ship has been sanctioned last Tuesday. Do I get my money?
Not at the moment is the answer.
Would they be able to get their money?
it would, if they can obtain the appropriate licenses, then and the appropriate permissions, then the answer to that would be yes.
Because the banks won't release the funds, would they, unless they got.
Correct. You had it, there's a process that you go through, and we at HFW we're very fortunate. We've got an excellent sanctions team
Hmm.
who I would describe as those who find solutions so that things can work, rather than the the alternative, which is no, you can't do that. No, you can't.
And that would be licenses from the EU or the US or whatever.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. On the dark fleet, we hear a lot about the 800 tankers being taken out of the situation, and the IG
Mm,
has been very vocal about this and what have you. Um, it creates an interesting scenario because you've then got a two-tier market. You've got the tankers trading outside of G7 aegis and getting on with it and moving oil for India and China or whatever they might want to do, Russian oil. And then you've got the sort of G7 element. So they've got an element of percentage or an amount of tonnage and amount of trade on both sides. Um, but of course, the ships that have been sanctioned are sanctioned, the ships are sanctioned rather than anything else. So they can't then go back into the good camp, so to speak, because they've been sanctioned.
yeah, absolutely. But it brings with it other complications. So, for example, most of those vessels, um, well, they're not insured through the IG.
Yeah.
So if you get incidents such as collisions with a dark fleet vessel, you've got serious challenges in relation to the ordinary course in which claims would be resolved between colliding vessels. That's not going to happen. You've also got situations where if there had been pollution, for example, how is a party who's suffered as a result of that, where they're going to claim from? Um, where they going to do they have access to insurance for the blameworthy vessel in relation to recovering their losses? The um, the consequences are very serious.
Is it going to not sort itself out, but become any clearer? The funny thing is, Paul, and I think like everything, isn't it? Somebody sort of drew this strange analogy the other day that if you lose your leg in an accident and then you realise, well, actually I could have died, the loss of your leg is nothing because I'm still alive and all the rest of it. You just get used to it. And I think when we have situations like this, the markets adjust and they get used to it, they go back to normal.
Hmm.
Um, but is this situation likely to become clearer, or will it stay as it is, or is it likely to change in a completely different way moving forward? A lot depends on everything, doesn't it? On Russia and what have you. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I mean, my instinctive first thought relates to there being a solution found between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah,
And I think a number of people early on in Trump's um, stay at the White House thought he would be able to broker a quick deal. And certainly, we, I think there's certainly some of my colleagues were hopeful that that would happen. And then the days of the dark fleet, that there would be no necessity for a dark fleet. There is a necessity because of the sanctions arising out of that conflict. Um, Looking ahead, I remain confident that something will happen. I think there are two routes to it. One is a resolution of the conflict, and the other is some sort of solution through shipping itself. Because I, I, I firmly believe shipping is very good at resolving its own issues, as it has done for centuries.
yeah, it is particularly good at that, and I think that was
Yeah,
demonstrated with things like COVID and what have you. When the industry needs to collaborate, it collaborates and it gets on with it. And
I mean, it's interesting you mentioned COVID, because I think the in the early days of COVID, a lot of people were completely unsure how things were going to work out, and every business was disaster planning, and they had lots of different scenarios that they were working to. But ultimately, what businesses were trying to do was to find solutions so they could carry on business. And if they had issues between them or disputes, they were practical about them, and they said, okay, well, let's carry on business. Let's park the dispute for the moment, and we'll come back to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And life went on because it was about dealing with the here and the now.
And I think even post Lehman Brothers, when world trade stopped, I mean,
Yeah,
that was unbelievable. And I think we all, certainly the view of a lot of the media at the time was, well, look, shipping will get through it and we'll get back to normal at some stage, because this shipping is all about cycles, good times and bad times. It's
correct.
going through a really bad time at the moment, but not realizing that actually letters of credit had been stopped. Banks weren't releasing any money, and there was no trade, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. And my step grandfather was a Greek ship owner, and he used to talk to me about shipping life cycles and all those sorts of things. But I think it just reinforcing um, the point that we've talked about so often, which is that shipping is incredibly resilient and solution driven. And it has to be because of when you consider that 90% of world trade is carried on a ship. And I think this is something again that came out to me during COVID, and when we had the Ever Given stuck in Suez, which brought, for me, it brought shipping into everybody's living room. And suddenly people realised how important shipping is to their everyday lives. I think before that, shipping had been the biggest invisible industry, and I think people now have a much better awareness of how
Yeah.
something like that affects their daily lives.
Coming on just finally on the geopolitical thing, we talked about Taiwan as being an issue, and putting aside the the dreadful potential ramifications of bringing other people into some sort of conflict, which you don't really want. But actually, taking Taiwan out of the situation economically would have a disastrous effect on the global economy, not
Yeah,
only on computer chips and all the rest of it, but just on trade and what have you. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, what does the industry? What concerns do they have? What are they saying to you? You're a law firm that sort of you have specialities in these areas. They would come to you for advice. What sort of concerns does the industry have?
I think we would look back to what happened with Ukraine, but you would be shifting the geography to
Yeah,
Asia, and looking more specifically at Taiwan and the wider region, because it wouldn't just be Taiwan that would be impacted by it. It would be the Asia region generally, and of course what the reaction would be to a war there, how the White House was to respond, indeed how Europe was to respond. So I think we would be informed by what happened in Ukraine.
yeah, yeah. And I think lessons have been learned on that, aren't they?
Mm,
Rather, we're going to support in defence in everything really,
correct.
and the way that warfare would be played out.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Coming on to sort of more positive things, technology and innovation, Paul. I mean, it's
Yeah,
look, I've always loved gadgets. I love AI and I love all this stuff. I look at the potential that it does. I look at the way that advancements are being made. And especially in an industry like shipping that has been slow to adopt as an industry against its industry peer groups. It's been a slow adopter without a doubt. Um, but it's really accelerating now, and there's a lot of opportunities, and you see, we hear about it and talk about it and read about it day by day with new stuff coming in. And I get amazed when I go online and you get a message, "Are you a robot?" You know, no, I'm a person. Okay, lovely, we'll talk to you. And it's a robot asking me if I'm a person or a robot. It's hilarious. Um, but but looking at technology and innovation, and specifically against that backdrop of the decarbonisation issue, okay, looking at advancements that have been made to reduce, shipping's environmental footprint and what have you. They must go together, those two, mustn't they? Because it is about even things like, digitizing the process of a ship coming into port with all its cargo manifests and what have you, so it doesn't hang around in port chucking out a load of smoke all the time. It's in and out very quickly. Therefore, it's reducing its environmental impact because of digitalization. But what are your thoughts on that, on the way technology and innovation might be contributing and can contribute?
I've got lots of thoughts. I mean, my starting point is to repeat what I said earlier, which is how shipping has evolved. Although I'm reminded of a statement that was made by Princess Anne, and I'm sure it was at London International Shipping Week 2 years ago, when she was talking about green technology and the return to sail, and of course we're seeing that
Yeah.
with a number of the stakeholders in the industry looking at that type of technology, which I think is just fascinating to see how technology is taking us back. So
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating. I was also reminded of something which I think is actually attributable to you, which is that when you think about it, where shipping is responsible for 90% of world trade by volume, and whereas you've got 3% of
Yeah.
emissions, worldwide emissions attributable to shipping, the proportion, when you compare it to world trade, is actually very small. In terms of what is happening technologically, I think one of the things that we see, and I find this absolutely fascinating myself, is as that technology is evolving with digitalization, all these sorts of things, it is the increasing connectivity, and therefore what comes with it is there's a risk, and that risk for me is on the cyber side, where um, there are concerns when you talk to stakeholders and you ask them what are things that are keeping them awake at night, and high up there on their list is cyber, and we've done a lot of work with colleagues at CyberOwl, who we have a joint venture with actually going back to something called the Captain's Table, which I think you'll be familiar with. They didn't win; they came second, but we've been sponsors of that event from the very beginning, and we've done thought leadership with them over the last few years. One of them called The Great Disconnect, and then the most recent one was called The Life Cycle Dilemma. I think what we're trying to do is to highlight to the industry where there are vulnerabilities in relation to this progress, and it is progress,
Yeah.
so that all the stakeholders can be protected from these risks. In terms of AI, like you, I'm very excited about AI, and I'm with you completely about a robot asking me whether I'm a human and how many bicycles or headlight or traffic lights I can see in a picture. And first time I get it wrong because I've identified a headlight that the robot can't see, and you sort of I find that just so ironic that I've got it wrong. But so yeah, I mean
Yeah, I think.
it's a positive thing.
I mean, there's on the positive side, apart from driving and efficiency, greater control of the management of the vessel and operational efficiency, and monitoring components and cutting down on downtime and all that side of it.
Yeah.
Um, you've also got the impact, positive as well as negative impact on the seafarers. So they got great.
I was literally just thinking that. And of course, you've got increased autonomy and 3D printing and digital twins and
Yeah,
all of those sorts of things. But I think you've hit your nail on the head in relation to seafarers and the reducing number of seafarers on board ships and how that affects them in their everyday lives, and how the demands on seafarers are so much greater from
yeah,
connectivity, less human interaction. Um, and I know that it's another topic for us to talk about, and perhaps we'll explore it later. But I think that is something that needs a lot of focus, particularly when we know, or the P&I clubs will tell us, that more than 50% of their claims are due to whether it's personal injury or incidents due to human error. And I was just going to make one other point, which is, I mean, I do a lot of, or we as a firm, but also personally, I do a lot with the mission seafarers. And when
yeah.
I see things about, someone's taken their life, and the ultimate, and you sort of think, what on earth is going on here?
I totally agree with you. I mean, I've been writing about this industry for 40 years, Paul. And the first thing I
Yeah,
wrote about was, you know, they need to look after your seafarers, and we continue to do it. The There's a lot of advantages in connectivity. The fact that you can ring home and you can speak to your wife and your kids,
mm,
and it brings you closer, and I love it. And I speak to my grandchildren every day, and it's lovely. It's super. However, it can also encourage sadness and isolation, and this whole issue of anxiety and mental health problems and that we read
yeah,
about, and especially when you've got things like that you can't get off the ship. There's been a death in the family, or your wife has run away with George down the road. Which must be horrendous. The very fact, and then you go out and your world has just been turned upside down. You open your door and then you're shunned by everybody else because nobody talks to anybody on board ship and all the rest of it. So it can have a downside to it as well.
yeah,
And then we haven't even talked about fatigue. The very fact that Filipinos spend more time than anybody else texting in their cabins. According to reports that people say, or certain nationalities will do certain things. And even on things like diet on board ship. We did an article on it a number of years ago, and looking, Indian seafarers, because of their diet, are 7 times more likely to have a heart attack than any other nationality. Filipinos, um,
okay,
tend to have a lot of diabetes because they eat more rice on board, and that sugars turn into starts turn into sugars, and etc. etc. So that there's a plus and a minus in all of these things as well. But anxiety, I think, and coming on to this whole human element, we've got to attract people into the industry. And that's not just aboard ship, that's into the law firms, that's into the media companies, it's into the newspapers, that's into the ports, into the ship,
yeah,
the insurance broking offices, all the rest of it. And that's an interesting issue, especially when you look at technology and innovation, how you attract in the younger generation. What are your thoughts on that? Because that's quite.
I mean, it's it's such an important issue, and I think it's not just a case of attracting more people into the industry, whichever part of the industry they're in, whichever part of what I would call the shipping life cycle, going from the design of a ship all the way through to its decommissioning. But I think something else that's really important is the diversity of
Yeah,
those who are coming into the industry, because certainly in relation to those who are at sea, the diversity is extremely poor. And that's something that needs to change. And I know there are owners and managers who are working very hard in order to improve that diversity, which certainly from my perspective at HFW, it's so important for us to have a diverse team of people who we're working with. I mean, it's one of my probably my number one aim for the group in what will be my final term as the head of shipping here to improve diversity at all levels.
Well, please you said all levels, because I think there's that element of inclusion to include everybody.
Yeah, absolutely,
Disability, everything. Creed,
completely,
culture, sexual persuasion doesn't matter. Let's get the right people and the best people into the industry.
absolutely, it's everything. It really is, and then it makes the culture that we're working in richer.
Hmm.
There's no question at all in my own mind in relation to that.
Coming on, we've been chatting away merrily here for like 35 minutes. It's amazing.
Well, you did say to me it was supposed to be us down the pub, but we haven't got any pints. So
We haven't. It's certainly been for another hour, I think. Really, um, we've got London International Shipping Week happening in a couple of months' time, which we're very
yeah,
excited about, and all signs with involvement and events going on the calendar, and the people are getting involved, people signing up for the gala dinner, and all of these sort of key sort of areas that you look at for indicators on how it's going to go. It's going to be massive. It's going to be excellent.
mm, mm,
And again, our thanks go out to HFW for your support, really right from the beginning. Really, on the dinner, you've been there right with us on this lovely journey that we've been going through. Just looking at London and the UK's role, finally, just in this, in managing change. This is the theme of LISW, managing the winds of change in global shipping. And you've got clusters all around the world. The clusters need each other. Singapore can't operate without London, and London can't operate without Hamburg, and we all need each other.
yeah.
What is the strategic importance of London and the UK in steering maritime development, global maritime development? Would you say? Is it still got that key role? What areas does it
It's
continue?
it's a very interesting question, and I think when I look back at London's role when I began my career 37 years ago, HW had two other offices, one in Hong Kong and one in Paris, and we now have over 20 offices. And I think what that demonstrates to me is how the world has become more connected on a global scale. And of course, shipping is truly global by its very nature. But I still believe that London remains at the heart in that increasingly connected hub. And as you talked about, I mean, you could use Singapore, Dubai. There are so many different hubs for shipping around the world. But I think that they are all connected. From a legal perspective, we still see more contracts, charter parties, whatever it may be, providing for English law and jurisdiction, whether it's High Court or LMAA or whatever it may be, for the resolution of any issues that may arise. And I think there's a talent pool all over the world with specialisms in shipping and shipping law. But for London, I think I would say there is a trust in predictability, and you've got talent from the solicitors, and it's great to be able to work on matters, whether it's advisory or transactional litigation, with people who know what they're doing, and that helps our clients resolve any issues that they may have. But you've got the barristers, the judges, you've got the clubs, the insurers, that they're all here. And I can look out the window, and if the blinds weren't down, I can see Lloyd's, and I can see all these wonderful institutions which have their roots in shipping. So has London changed its position? I don't think it has over the years. I think it's still just as important, but the world has changed with it.
I think I agree with that element, and I think, as I said before, you've got the clusters all operating in different areas around the world, and they are relying on each other. But London, even on arbitration, still is a bit the largest by a factor of 3, isn't it, or whatever, against Hong Kong and Singapore.
Yeah, we in fact we're just working on our latest edition of arbitration by numbers, and that will come out soon. But yeah, London is still the number one forum for resolving disputes. Yeah.
So, got the week happening very shortly. What are you looking forward to most during London International Shipping Week, Paul? You're going to be very busy, I'm sure.
It's well. First of all, I'm really looking forward to it. Each couple of years when it happens, I get more and more excited
Yeah.
about it. And this time around, there are literally so many events. I think, as we were mentioning earlier, I've managed to get myself triple booked on one day, and I'm juggling here and there. Ultimately, I'm looking forward to seeing people
Yeah.
because it really is a fantastic occasion when people come to London and we talk about the industry that, frankly, we love, and that evolves with us every single day. And it is a wonderful industry to be part of.
No, I think you're right. I think post-COVID, it's really brought it home how important personal interaction is, within the industry.
Yeah.
We also revel in the fact that finally shipping has got the eye of the politicians and the regulators, and they use London Shipping Week as an opportunity to come in and meet the industry as well. And we've got between 25 and 30 international delegations coming over so far. There'll be more. So there's going to be a lot happening there. But Paul, look, thank you so much. I mean, I can't wait for 2 years' time to have another chat with you. I mean, I absolutely love. We seem to sort of just cover everything so effortlessly and what have you. But it's been absolutely brilliant chatting to you.
And
We will
likewise.
meet up during London International Shipping Week on probably more than about 10 or 20 occasions. But thank you, and thank you to HFW and your colleagues there.
It's a pleasure.
It means a lot, putting an event like this together is a lot, and when you've got the support of companies like yourselves, it just means we're not alone in this, and we're getting on, and we've got the right people behind us as well. So it does mean an awful lot. But thank you very much,
Pleasure.
Paul,
And thank you. Nice to talk to you as always.
all right, sir. All the best.